Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, race fans. It's David O'Reilly diving in to do my best to give you some coverage. I've just left the Fig Jam Racing car and handed over to Per, our number 3 driver, and I'm hopefully going to give you some updates. Yes, sorry guys, my mic is on automatic and I was moving some stuff around, having a drink of water. Maybe a bit like Kimmy, yeah, you could say. So I'll start by giving you an update class by class. In GT1 class, the race is being led by Speed and Spellet, with the 2 drivers, Kavila and Reneo. They're both sharing the same PC and in the lead with 243 laps. And also having recorded the fastest race lap of the evening. They hold a lead of around half a lap, about 52 seconds to Jim Hughes of Mad Cape. So they've held the top team to within a lap. And then it's 9 laps back to Daniel Escobar in the rFactor endurance team. And they're on 233 laps, they're 9 laps down. And then we've got Fig Jam Racing, they're on 228, so 5 laps down from P3. But holding a 6-lap lead over Miguel Lopez from Ghost Speed Racing. So we've got quite a spread. We've got 19 laps from P1 to P4 in GT1. If we have a look at the GT2 class, the lead is being held by Project Resistance Racing, Ruben Suarez. Project Resistance, of course, would be well known to us because they did extremely well in Bahrain. In fact, taking out all 3 classes. So they've certainly maintained their fantastic form. They're sitting on 240 laps, which in fact has them in P2 overall. Only the top 2 GT1 cars, in fact, are ahead of the leading GT2 car of Ruben Suarez. So those guys have driven exceptionally well. RFN Motorsport is running in P2 in GT2, only 3 laps down with 237 laps. So in fact, that places them ahead of, again, all but the top 2 GT1s. In fact, we've got 2 GT1s and then we've got the the entire podium of GT2s are all ahead of the P3 GT1 car. So RFN Motorsport Adrian Sabila running in P2 in GT2, and then it's TXL Racing Frederick Schornstein, who came second in class in the last race in Bahrain. He's running P3 in GT2, and approximately 1 minute 13 seconds down. So we have 3 hours and 45 minutes to go. A lot can happen, but they're the positions at the moment in GT1, GT2. Now if we move down to GT4 class, we had some incredibly close racing earlier on. In fact, when I was watching this this broadcast before I left work, I think at the 3.5 hour mark, the entire podium of GT4 cars was separated by 18 seconds. So GT4 has been the place for incredible racing, incredibly close racing. Marcin, I won't attempt his surname, Marcin from Roaring Pipes Maniacs is in the lead with 225 laps, and in fact that puts him in P10 overall. Then we've got Jos van der Sturen. I've got a suspicion that he might be from the Netherlands. Ah yes, the team name gives that away. And Borja Ori. All three of those guys are lapping at very similar pace. All of their last laps were 2:11 and some change. Marcin's on 225 laps. Jos is on 223, so he's 1 minute 41 down. And then rFactor Endurance Team is on 219. So we've got a spread of 6 laps there from first to third, the final podium position. But PR Team España, with 218 laps, is in fact only 10 seconds adrift of P3, having served the penalty earlier. And then rounding out the class in GT4, we then have Angelo Peter in Road Bandits, and Rui Martins on 210 laps. Rui Martins from Team Motorsport, and it looks like Tamas Foff in Mad Cape looks like he's retired because he's in the pits and he's 60 laps down, so that's looking to me like a retirement. We're looking at some pretty intense traffic action here. Can see my teammate Per Oquist is working his way through some GT4s. The traffic's been pretty good. Most of the guys have been very, very predictable. In fact, it helps if no one makes any sudden moves. If the cars stick to their racing line, it's when somebody makes a sudden jink and makes an unpredictable move to let you through that it can tend to create a surprising result. Lap time wise, if we look at all of the classes, it's interesting to see that the top GT1 cars has gone as quick as a 155, 156, and then we've got a gaggle of GT2s that have had a top time of 159, but it would appear we've had a lot of consistency from the GT2 cars. In a small way, this track suits them a little bit because the GT2, when it's set up properly, is lovely on turn-in. It seems to have a very strong front end and lovely on turn entry. But getting that big 2-valve per cylinder V8 engined bit of American muscle car out of the corners can sometimes be a little bit problematic. Corvette's running a 6-litre single overhead cam 2-valve per cylinder engine, so a lot of torque. a lot of grunt coming out of the corner. In fact, it pulls more torque than the GT1, although the GT1's got a bit more overall horsepower. So in good hands, as the results have shown, a well-driven GT2 can really prove to be a thorn in the side of any GT1s that might have some issues. Just looking at the track viewer there, it looks to me like Jim Hughes, the second placed GT1, might be about to come up against some traffic. We have a look at RSU. Yes, Ruben Suarez, who is the leading GT2, is about to be lapped again by Jim Hughes in the second placed GT1, if I'm correct. And the two of those cars are just about to enter the main straight. Check, check. I'm just looking on the screen now, and we've got the lead car of Cavalier and Rineo about to pull another lap on the fourth placed Fig Jam Racing driver of Per Åquist. Per had to call up on Thursday night to stand in for this drive and hadn't done any practice on this track at all, so in fact he's done a sterling job to circulate at the pace that he has done. So I just want to thank him on air for doing a sterling job. David Gronvals, of course, our #1 driver, has done 2 2-hour stints. This is the second of Per's 2 2-hour stints. And at 11 o'clock I'll be taking over again. Davey Lories is just observing that the way it's looking, we're going to have a GT2 on the podium overall, which I can't fault his logic, because for the third place GT1 to catch the first place GT2, he's got about 6 or 7 laps to catch up, so and 3 hours and 33 minutes to do it in. Quick bit of mental arithmetic. 30 laps an hour. There's about 100 laps to go, if my maths are correct. 100 laps at maybe an optimum speed differential of 2 laps. We've got 200 seconds. 200 seconds is really only 3.5 laps on pure pace, so unless the lead GT2 has an issue, we're going to be seeing a GT2 on the podium overall. So good call, Davey. So as Xavier has just pointed out, Jimmy Hughes is now only 7 seconds behind the leader. So there's a real fight going on there for P1. Yep, they're on the same sector. The lead car just rounding the hairpin, and Jimmy Hughes just approaching the hairpin. So we're in a real fight here, and a bit of traffic in the way as well. A bit of a mix of traffic: GT4, GT2, GT1. So hopefully both the guys will get a clean run through. Yeah, we've certainly got a nice close fight for P1 in GT1. Jimmy Hughes 8.2 seconds off the lead car. We can't quite tell who's driving the lead car because those guys are sharing one PC, and when they do a driver change, it's a physical driver change at the PC. So there's no ID change in the in-game stats. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I've been joined by Xavier Di Cavallo, the team owner, team manager of Mad Cape Racing, joined us in the commentary booth. How do you see it panning out, Xavier?
Hi Dave, and hi guys. It's the second time in the broadcast booth today. Of course, earlier on did an interview with Scott and Lewis. Funny enough, they asked me the exact same question. We don't have a lot of time left in the race. Currently got about 3.5 hours to go. We've already had 8 hours and about 8 hours 15 minutes of this race done and dusted. It's been eventful, both for my team and for a couple of others. I think one or two cars already receiving drive-through penalties. Not something we see very often in a virtual World Endurance Championship is when drivers, when the race control issues live penalties during an event. So that was a first and something new. I think my own team has had trouble in GT4, hence why we are no longer competing. Guys ran into a bit of trouble and just went all downhill from there, and the guys decided, well, you know, it's time for them to call it a day. Of course, the GT1 car, as was mentioned earlier, is busy chasing down Cavella in the other GT1. He was, or he is, currently also chasing down second position in the championship. And if Cavella has an incident at all, or if they drop down to fourth position and Mad Cape wins the race, that will then mean that Mad Cape Racing Team wins the championship. Which, considering the position in which they were coming into this round, which was sixth position, that's a really good result for us then. Even second position, I'm extremely happy and extremely proud with that result. And if you can achieve that, then you know, it's a little bit of consolation for some of the stuff that's happened earlier on in the season.
Yeah, well, it's certainly an awesome performance to be holding the lead car to within 10 or a dozen seconds after 256 laps of racing, and you guys had your challenges in the last round in Bahrain. Some of the viewers might be a little bit confused over how blue flags are interpreted, and I know that from our perspective the blue flag rule is pretty much that it's there for information purposes only, but in fact after several laps of walking and blocking from a car that was a few laps down but in the same class as the Mad Cape GT4, a penalty was issued. Can you fill us in on that one, Xavier?
I wasn't really involved in what was going on with the GT4 team at that time. What I had gotten was that Miroslav was basically catching one of the back markers, and as soon as he got behind the back marker was trying to race him and you know, effectively blocking him and trying to re-overtake him every time he would get past. And Miroslav eventually just decided, well, he couldn't exactly get around the guy. There was no point in trying because, you know, it would have just ended in both of them going off, which eventually it did, unfortunately. Down the straight, Miroslav had gotten turned around, and that's what the penalty was issued for. For that, I'm guessing that's what the penalty was issued for, not for ignoring blue flags, but for that actual incident that happened on the main straight.
Oh, okay, I see. That explains it. Now, a subject quite close to home, I'm just seeing here that the Fig Jam racing car has now dropped down to P5 in class, which is an unfortunate turn of events because not so long ago we were 5 laps up, so I imagine Per has had some issues there.
It is unfortunate. Going by the pace that Big Jam has shown in previous 2 events, I would have expected them to be a little further up the order than what they are at the moment. I mean, in previous rounds they showed a strong pace and were very consistent, and you know, didn't run into much trouble, I don't think. And then coming into this round, I think things just got a little bit twisted and a little bit difficult for Big Jam.
Yeah, well, we have, in essence, we've got a pretty quick #1 driver in the shape of David Gronvals, and he's able to circulate within a second or so of the very fastest guys, and quite consistently. But by his own admission, for this particular race, he had some important other real world commitments and wasn't able to devote as much time as he would have liked to for practice. So while it didn't impact his ultimate pace, it did impact his consistency, and that cost us a couple of times. When the driver change occurred, David had to pit with damage. That was a 5-minute pit stop, and then some more damage occurred in his latest stint, which was not really down to him. There was a spinning car in front of him which he collected, and that was a 7-minute repair. So we lost 12 minutes in the pits. So David's got great pace, but we had a little bit of bad luck. And per Oquist, who's in the car at the moment, was really only drafted in at the last minute. We lost our number 3 driver, Tom Endres, who had some other work commitments. So it was only Thursday that we made contact and invited Per to drive in the car. So it was really only Thursday night and Friday night that we managed to get in the car, get the setup, and do some practice laps. But, so again, he's shown that he can circulate at quite reasonable pace. He's been running around at the 2-minute level. But the lack of laps has just led to a bit of inconsistency and a couple of errors which has put us down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, Per is actually circulating at quite a pace. He's hanging on to what the leaders were doing earlier on in the race, which is a 2-minute, well, he's doing 2-minute 5, which really is competitive time. A lot of the other guys throughout the race we've seen a little bit slower during the end, towards the end of their stints. Per, throughout the race, or throughout his stints, has seemed fairly consistent. And for someone, as you say, who was drafted in at the last minute, I think that's a really commendable effort. You know, it's not easy to do something like that. These guys make it look easy on the broadcast, but I can tell you now it's not.
Yeah, we took the view that if Per came along and drove, it meant at least that we could do the race. Whereas if he didn't join the team, we were out, and the audience would have had to put up with several hours of my commentating. So no one wins in that environment. So we decided, hey, come on board, take the reserve seat, and at least if you can circulate and keep the car on the track, we're going to be in the race. And as it stands, we're only 1 lap off P4 after that incident, and it doesn't look like that's based on pace really. So when I get back in the car at 11 o'clock, I'll have 2 hours hopefully to hunt those guys down and you know, make a race.
Just received some interesting news here from one of Mad Cave guys. Of course, a little bit of inside info. Jimmy Hughes has recently pitted, which means he's dropped off the lead considerably. But he's treating this pit stop as an handicap and he's been told by the rest of the team to push like crazy. So, obviously I'm not in the channel at the moment, so I'm not really controlling him. It seems as though the guys who are left in charge are going for the win. So, I'm not quite sure whether they'll be able to catch Speed and Spirit. I mean, that team has been at the front practically the entire race. Immense pace and brilliant consistency from those guys. Jimmy's been hanging on, Robert Knockon's been hanging on, I've been trying my best to hang on, but it's just not working. So I think second place for Mad Cave is the most realistic, unless Spin Spirit has some sort of an issue or make a couple of errors that bring them further down the grid.
Well, it's interesting, you know. I mean, it's a cliche, but a lot can happen. If we look at the GT1 rankings at the moment, Ghost Speed Racing, who are on the same lap as us they're in P4. Those guys took pole and just had stunning pace in the opening part of the race, but they've dropped off a bit in pace and consistency, and dropped well down the rankings. And in fact, you know, they look attackable even from a P4 perspective. So the fact that Speed and Spellet, that's Cavela and Reneo, the fact that they were able to hold them to within a lap allowed them to capitalise when bad luck struck, and that's put them in P1. But yeah, with 3 hours and 13 minutes to go, there's still a lot can happen. Your Mad Cave's 2 laps down. That's one little bit of damage, and that's 2 laps.
We just need to clarify on that issue quickly. Mad Cave is actually on the same lap as Spin Spirit. However, at the moment, I think they are 3/4 of a lap behind. There was a timing issue earlier on in the race which caused this lap down issue to arise. We are in fact on the same lap. We haven't dropped off. We haven't been lapped by the Spin Spirit car. As I said, we are on the same lap and we are fighting for the lead.
Okay, thanks for clearing that up.
However, if I take a look at the gap and the lap times, that Speed and Spirit car, even though it's not on new rubber, it's still pounding down some extremely competitive lap times, down at the 158. The low 158 for the back, and Jimmy Hughes, of course, in the 98 GT1 car, but he's running in the 159s, mid 159s. The gap is currently, if you bring them a lap down, I think it's about 1 minute 7. Sounds about right, 3/4 of a lap behind. So when Speed and Spirit finally does pit, maybe Jimmy Hughes will be a bit closer, and maybe that undercut strategy would have worked.
Well, it's worth the throw of the dice, because if they just cruise around on full fuel and more, you know, on the high fuel loads or worn tyres, it's not gonna catch the guys in P1. The guys in P1 have got good pace. It's if they throw the dice and find that they put themselves on a different pit stop sequence, it can mean that they're racing on fresh rubber when the other guys are racing on worn rubber, and potentially give them an edge. I imagine if they've just pitted, they're still in the process of bringing the tyres in. Just as a bit of trivia, in a GT1, it takes 5 to 6 laps for the tyres to reach optimum working temperature once you exit the pits. So there's a period of nursing them in, keeping the car safe and not pushing too hard until the tyres come in. And then, of course, once they've come in, you've only got a given period of laps before you start to have wear issues. So the performance curve of the tyre, it's not a flat curve. It sort of increases for half a dozen laps, stabilises for a few laps, and then starts to drop off. And you really do need to make allowances in your driving style for the changing performance.
What we found is that setup is a big factor at the circuit. It's been a pretty big factor before at previous circuits, especially with these cars. Of course, there's a lot of weight being thrown around and a lot of load on the tyres. However, at this round, since it's such a flat circuit, you know, the tyres are scrubbing and sliding a lot, particularly you know, going through the fast right-hand corners. I spoke about this a little bit earlier. When I had my interview a little bit earlier on, the front left definitely takes a lot of strain through those fast right-hand corners, and as a result, it gets worn out the quickest. And if you don't look after that tyre, and if that tyre drops off, you basically have to drop your pace quite a considerable amount, just in order to go through those corners at enough of a speed to keep the guys behind you at bay, and to be able to try and catch guys ahead. You almost have to drive like a fairy to go a bit faster. Weird analogy, but it's the best way I can explain it. You know, with this circuit, you've got to put a lot of the weight on the front tyres. I mean, I'm speaking for the GT1 here. You've got to put a lot of weight on the front tyres in order to get the car around. Previously, we were sort of steering the car with the rear of the car, and trying to get the oversteer going with, and using the throttle a little bit. Whereas here, you're off throttle for most of the corner, so you're trying to roll around, and the weight transfer. You need to get the weight transfer and the balance quite proper. And you'll be able to get the weight on the front of the car and lean the weight onto those front tyres, which of course gives them extra stress, and later on in your stint gives you a lot of understeer. I think in the GT4 and the GT2 it might be a little bit less, but I think in the GT2 it might be a little bit less, but quite similar in terms of tyre wear and which tyres are the ones that are going off. GT4 takes a little bit longer for those tyres to go off. I mean, we've seen throughout this race quite a lot of those drivers doing well over 40-minute stints to an hour, whereas in the GT1 the sort of cutoff is at about 40 minutes, 50 minutes. Whereas in previous rounds we've seen guys doing, you know, nearly a full tank of fuel on the tyres. Whereas here, as I said, it's damn near impossible to do that in the GT1. I know that you are quite technically clued up, so maybe you can give us a little bit of insight, or a little bit more insight into why that might be happening. I mean, you know a little bit about the circuit and quite a bit about the cars, so maybe you can give us a little bit of insight as to why that might be happening.
Yeah, well, it's been interesting. I mean, the 3 tracks we've raced at so far have been radically different in their impact on tyre strategy and therefore fuel strategy. The two are linked, of course, because there's no point brimming the tank with fuel if your tyres are only going to last for 60 of those 100 litres. So the two are linked, and once you make the decision as to how long you want to run on tyres, you only put just enough fuel in to run that distance, or you're lugging 30 kilos around unnecessarily for hundreds of laps, and that ends up adding a lot to your race time. But looking at it specifically, I mean, Sepang, the car was really working the tyres hard in Sepang. It had a sequence of pretty high G corners, particularly in Sector 2, very turny, high loads, and it was really considered a miracle when in the practice race, Estev Ruida managed to drive a full tank of fuel on tyres at race pace. Bahrain, very different, pretty high grip track, and a lot of straights, and the corners tended to be fairly low speed corners. So when you look at the lap in Bahrain, it was really only I think the turn 11, 12, turn 12 combination where you were really working the car hard and working the front tyres hard, and the rest of the time you're either going as fast as you could on a straight or braking hard for a relatively low speed corner. So the G loadings on the front tyre were really fairly moderate, and the heat generation was fairly moderate. But when we come here to this particular track, it is just very turny. It is non-stop. In fact, when I was learning the track, it was reminding me a little bit of the Hungaroring, but without any topographical features. It's just turn after turn after turn, and you're working the car longitudinally, you're working the car laterally, and there's a lot of load. So every corner has its impact, and when the track is as turny as this, it just puts a massive amount of pressure on particularly the fronts, but it tends to be the front left and the rear left because of the the clockwise direction of travel. It just puts massive loads on. Now, the very best of the drivers are able to manage the longitudinal loads extremely well. If anybody wants to ever understand how all that works, there's a fantastic YouTube interview with Jackie Stewart. I think he's interviewed in a restaurant with no shirt on, so it's hard to forget. Jackie Stewart playing James Hunt, I suppose. But the very top drivers can seem to manage those longitudinal loads, load up the front momentarily to get turned in, and then very smoothly shift the load back onto the rears, and in doing so, once you've got the car pointed in, save the front tyres significantly, and that's the real skill. But to do that over a sequence of corners, over a whole stint, takes real skill. Camber has an impact.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do agree. The circuit is, of course, way more corners than there are straights. It contrasts what we've been seeing, in previous races throughout the season, and as you say, Malaysia and Bahrain, a lot of straights. Whereas here we've got some very, very short straights and quite a lot of corners. I mean, it's almost like it's never ending with the corners until you hit that main straight. That main straight is almost like a haven. It's that time to rest your mind. It's that time to sort of, put yourself at ease and say, okay, well, yeah, I've got a little bit of a break. Okay, now we're getting back into some corners. One can get very lost as well at this circuit. As you said, there's not much elevation below, and not much elevation change. There's a lot of, it's very flat, and the scenery is all pretty much the same. So, I know through my instant, I got lost at one point, and I thought that I was going through one of the faster right-handers when it was actually one of the slower ones. So I just shifted down into fourth and gone flipping. I just went almost full pace through the corner and found myself off the circuit and narrowly missing one of the walls.
I bet I know which one it was.
Very easy mistake to make here.
Was that the right-hander immediately after the hairpin?
Yes.
Yeah, well, exactly the same thing happened to me Xavier. It's uncanny that the entry to that second gear right-hander with immediately follows the hairpin just looks so much like the first of the turn 13, 14, 15, the triple right-handers, that that oh my gosh moment where you think this is not turn 12, this is turn 6, and I'm in all sorts of trouble here. And exactly the same thing happened to me, but I was able to dump it into second gear very quickly, and I took that corner a bit more like Smokey and the Bandit than a GT1 car in an endurance race, but just managed to hold it and stave off any tears. But yeah, exactly the same thing happened to me, exactly the same corner, and I found myself giving that corner a name and just saying to myself every time I exited the hairpin, watch out for the second gear right, watch out for the second gear right. Yeah, no, it's uncanny. Featureless terrain, I guess, in truth, is what this track's about. Really challenging layout, very demanding driving, but somewhat bereft of features. And Herman Tilke gets a lot of criticism, but what he did in India was amazing. They moved thousands of tons of earth to create significant elevation changes and make a very interesting track. And this track here, and no disrespect to the designers or the people who've crafted it within the game, but if this track had some elevation changes, it would be stunning. It would just transform it. The turns, I think it's 13, 14, 15, the triple right-hander is almost a mirror image of turn 8 at Turkey, which is one of the greatest turns in Formula One. But of course, because it's dead flat, it just doesn't drive the same.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think that's one of my favourite parts of this circuit is that right-handed combination that you've just mentioned, the triple right-hander. I mean, you're flying in at about 5th gear, flat out, and then all of a sudden you've got to dab the brake quickly, shift it down into 4th, and throw the car in, whack the gas again once you're mid-corner, or just before the corner even begins. You can whack the gas again, drift it out, or float the car out onto the AstroTurf a little bit. Try not to unsettle the car, but lift off the gas again, throw it into the next right-hander, brake a little bit early, shift down into 3rd, throw it into the next right-hander, and then you've of course got that really sharp left to deal with, that little 3rd gear or 4th gear left heading down back to the final corner. I think that's one of my favourite combinations at the circuit, and maybe one of my favourite combinations I've ever raced in sim racing.
Yeah, that turn 15 left-hander, it's one of those ones that slowly reveals its pace to you. And just to reiterate what you were saying, when you attack turns 12, 13, 14, the triple right-hander, it's almost a case of how much loving do I want to give this front left, or am I feeling a bit mean? How much curb am I willing to take? How hard do I want to work the front left-hand corner of the car? But then turn 15, it's just a little lift, and as soon as you can see the apex, you can absolutely plant it. And if you're patient enough and willing to let the car drift on exit, that is a much quicker corner than it looks on approach. And yeah, agree 100%, Xavier. That's an exciting sector on the track for sure.
It is, and I mean, you've got a couple of those kinds of corners where the cars feel like they have a lot more grip than what they do. So you can really push the car throughout those corners. I mean, there's a couple of them where you're really flying in, you're looking at this corner and going, no, there's no way I want to make this. And then, you throw the car in, and all of a sudden there's just some grip, and you go completely around. And you go around really, really quickly. It's a really sort of fun combination of corners at the circuit. I mean, it's tiresome, and it can feel like it's never ending, but I mean, it's definitely fun. And I think, there are also a couple of corners, that contrast that. There are a couple of corners that can really catch you out, where you think, okay, well, the rest of the corners I've been able to really push it through them. Let's try that and see if I can do that at this corner. As soon as you do that, you end yourself, or you see yourself ending up a little bit off the circuit, or going wide a bit, or maybe even having a really costly off-track excursion. So it can get really confusing, and this goes back to what I was saying about getting lost on the circuit. And as you said, that turn 6, I think you said it was turn 6, and that triple right-hander combination looks so similar.
Yeah, I'm just looking at my map now. I've got to confess, this was probably one of the hardest tracks to learn, this one, other than perhaps the Targa Florio, but that's probably another 100 kilometres longer, but or 50 kilometres longer. But yeah, it was actually turn 7. So what I found myself doing was I printed out a map of the track, and then I gave names to each of the corners, each of the significant corners. So particularly the ones that were problematic. And so once I had a name for the corner, I could talk myself through the track and hopefully have a slightly reduced error rate.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to be able to have that kind of not a procedure really, but like that way of learning circuits. I mean, it does get difficult. I mean, as you said, when learning a circuit like Losail, you're going to need, you know, some sort of reference points. You know, you're going to maybe need to print yourself the track map and stick it on your wheel, or you're going to have to really have a good memory. Otherwise, you know, these corners are just going to seem like a brand new corner every time you get to it, because it's really difficult to memorize since there's so many corners. I just want to say quickly, I've just received note, and I've actually just seen Jimmy Hughes is currently lapping almost a second faster than the Spin and Spillet car, Cavello and Raniero, and seems to be closing the gap up a little bit. I think Raniero had a bit of problems and lost 7 seconds to Jimmy, if I'm not mistaken, and Jimmy is actually gaining a lot of ground. I think a little bit ago he was 2.5 seconds quicker than the leader. Another interesting thing is that if you look just in the background there, you can see how beautiful the sunset looks at the circuit. Something that we haven't really seen, say, at Bahrain or at Malaysia. I'm not talking about the darkness or everything, because of course we did definitely see darkness at Bahrain. But this sort of a sunset, you don't really get this at many other circuits, and it's due to the flatness of the circuit, where you can see sort of there's no scenery around. So I mean, it's just a flat sort of sandy desert. There's no real grandstands. I mean, when you're out there in the car, this is also why it's what helps you get lost in the circuit as well. But I mean, you can see the beautiful sunset, which we haven't been able to see at previous circuits. Just a point I want to bring up there. You know, it's really great to see these really cool features and scenery sort of objects and things coming up in simulated racing. And I don't even think I've seen a sunset that looked that good on a real life TV broadcast. I mean, it really does look like something else.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess there's something about it. I'm just going to mention a couple of things about on-track action for a second. I want to mention Artur Sizkula, Roaring Pipes Maniacs. He's in the lead in GT4. He's holding a lead of 24 odd seconds. Now, the same driver did exceptionally well in the first practice race in Sepang. Managed to have superb tyre life as well as good pace. Now that's in this race now that's put him in the lead in GT4. GT2, Ruben Suarez is still in the lead in that class, 3 laps ahead of the next place car of Antonio Estudilos, and then Frederick Schornstein in TXL Racing is in the third podium spot in GT2. A little bit of a battle looming, as well as the exciting goings on for the lead in GT1, where, as Xavier said, Jimmy is showing a bit of pace, and it's looking tantalising like over the next couple of hours they might be able to catch P1 for the outright win. But my own teammate Per in Fig Jam Racing, he's now pulled the gap down to 14 seconds. We're racing for P4 effectively. So there's still some fantastic racing going on and some really hard fought battles happening.
And I mean, I've just received an updated version of the standings. Of course, one of the SRBM guys very kindly making an updated points table there throughout the race. Once we've reached the 9 hour mark, which is where we are at the moment, for those of you who don't know, or just passed it I think a while ago, currently the standings would look like this. Spillet would have won the championship if the race had finished now. Mad Cape GT1 would have come second. Fig Jam would have come third, which is a really good result, I must say, for the championship. And as I said earlier on, that would be due to the brilliant tournament events and brilliant results that you guys have had in previous rounds. I think fourth position would have gone to, if the rFactor finish right now, race rFactor endurance team. Then fifth would have gone to Ghost Speed. Sixth would have gone to Project Resistance. Seventh would have gone to OXXO. Rear Endurance would have taken 8th. Ninth will have gone to RFN, and SRVN would have taken the top 10 overall. I'm not really sure. I mean, that's the only course I've really calculated. Can try and do a quick calculation and go through some, like the top 3 of each of the GT2 and GT4s. Currently, Project Resistance would have won the GT2. TXL would have ended up in second, and RFN Motorsports would have ended up third. GT4, SRVN will have won with 90 points. PRT.ES, which is Project Resistance, they would have ended up second with 82 points. Of course, they caused a little bit of trouble earlier on in this race, so there might be a penalty after the race, we don't know yet. Of course, they did serve that drive-through penalty. Third position will have gone through RPM, or in fact Maniacs, Bram Hengeveld's very own team, the own race department.
So we shouldn't be surprised that the Roaring Pipes Maniacs guys have got a turn of pace when they need it. Thought it might be interesting just to talk a little bit about driving in traffic as one of the let's say mid-pack pace GT1s. It's an interesting experience when you come up against the GT4. It's usually a couple of corners and you're through, unless you happen to arrive on them in a fairly twisty bit, such as, you know, the turn 4-5 combination, which is the double 90-degree right-handed. Then you just got to be a bit patient and hopefully get a nice exit at turn 6, which is the hairpin, and pull alongside them before the second gear right-handed turn 7, which causes so much problems that Xavier and I were talking about it before. So the GT4s, it's a pretty straightforward passage in the GT1. GT2 is a whole different ball game, because a well-driven GT2 is pretty feisty and pretty competitive through the infield. And in fact, if you don't hold yourself pretty close to them, they've got a reasonable turn of pace down the straight as well. So you've got to calculate a little bit more. And in fact, I've got to say, it's a real pleasure when you're in the GT1, when you come up against a well-driven GT2 and you've got to fight and plot and plan and decide how you're going to make the pass. And it'll often be a lap or two, certainly in my hands, maybe not for the quickest guys, but you've really got to strategize a little bit and just make sure you're right where your bumps are into the final turn 16, so that there's no ifs or buts as you head down the main straight. So the quick GT2 is a nice car to race with, and not the least of which is because it just has such an awesome noise, and every time they downshift you've got that beautiful flames out of the exhaust, and it's quite an evocative car to see on the track, the GT2, and a real pleasure to race against these guys.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. You know, it becomes a bit frustrating when, you know, you're not the fastest GT1 sort of driver to come up against the fast GT2. I mean, you saw earlier on Stefan Woudenberg in that in the Tiger Racing GT2 ended up overtaking one of the GT1 cars and actually racing against it. So I mean, you can have a situation like that, and I think you know, so far this round there's been one or two incidents, but fairly clean and fairly calculated driving by most of the guys. You know, GT1's getting around GT2's quite easily, just waiting for the exit of the corners, as you said. I mean, I would normally wait nearly a full lap before I'd line GT2 up for a pass. GT4 is a little bit more difficult, obviously when you catch them in the twisty bits, you really have to slow down and wait behind them, otherwise you're going to end up taking one of them off, or vice versa. You know, when Miroslav and one of the PR team guys had the incident, it was of course both in the same class, and that's another thing where it becomes frustrating, is that you're driving or essentially racing against someone in your own class and you need to lap that person, but you're both going the same speed, so it becomes extremely frustrating and extremely difficult to do so. But as I've said Most of the, or majority of this race has seen some very clean overtakes and some very clean laps.
Yes, you've got to give it some thought sometimes. In my last stint, for example, we had the Team 118 rFactor endurance team appeared in our rear view mirror, being driven quite well by one of their guys. And I radioed my team and said, okay, am I racing this guy or not? And they informed me that he was 4 laps up, and that if it got close I needed to let him through. But we were actually able to extend the gap, to pull a tidy gap on that car, which was a nice feeling, because it meant they were 4 laps ahead on the track, but it wasn't necessarily down to pace, it was more down to incidents, that we were able to actually put them into the distance and outdrive them, and it meant we didn't have to make that decision to lift and let them through, which we would of course done if they'd got right on our gearbox and it was starting to become a problem for them, being that they were 4 laps up and also causing extra stress for us and more problems than anything else. We would have lifted on turn exit and let them through, but it was just nice to be able to pull a gap and keep racing and not have to yield to a car. Having to yield to a car in the same class never feels good, but certainly when you're about to be lapped by the leader, it's not something you want to make a race of, and a couple of times.
Talking about the leaders quickly, Jimmy Hughes has really closed up on Cavella and Ronell. That gap is now down to 4 seconds, and this is in fact for the lead. Jimmy Hughes really closed that gap very quickly, I must say. I'm not sure if Cavella and Ronell have put it, but it seems as though Jimmy has closed that gap and is closing it down even more as this lap goes on. So we'll see, maybe we'll have a really good fight on our hands for the lead of this race within the next couple of minutes.
Yeah, very exciting. They're just at the exit of turn 16 now, or turn 15, about to enter the final turn. And yep, these guys are making a hell of a race of it.
Right, we've been joined in the commentary box by PXL Racing's Frederick Skornstein. Hi Frederick.
Hi.
I believe you've been in the booth earlier on today and we've done a couple of interviews. Do you have anything that you would like to share with us, any inside info or anything to contribute to what we've been saying?
We had a real issue with our driver swaps, and Matt Center had to do a double stint because on the first driver swap just said, okay, I will gain control in 25 seconds or so, but I never gained control, and he stayed in control. And yeah, when he did his second stint, we tried it again, and it didn't work. So we had to disconnect and got a 6-minute penalty. So that explains why we are now back in 3rd position. But yeah, we are keeping RFN Motorsport honest and managed to unlap us on our stint. Yeah, wasn't maybe from my part it was a clean overtake, but I was on the inside. I already outbraked him, but he turned in on me and we both tangled a little bit, but no damage to either one, and we just lost, I don't know, 1.5 seconds. So our aim is now not to win anymore, but to get 2nd place back, so at least we finish behind Project, who did a really awesome job. And I don't know how they did it, but they mainly drove until now with just 2 drivers, which is pretty astonishing. And to be fair, they were overall they both were overall quicker than us 4 at the moment. So yeah, I maybe just could keep up with this guy, but I think they are better on strategy and they are a bit better on overall speed. So I guess they deserve their position.
So it sounds like you're up against a very strong team there, and with a couple of technical issues, you're never going to pull them back in. So that sounds like a pretty fair analysis.
Yeah, it's it was okay. So maybe if we hadn't had the spin on the first lap, we might have had an advantage because they had a drive-through penalty. So yeah, but in the end, I think they were just that tiny bit quicker. But yeah, they had one of their GT1 drivers now in the car a lot, and he was really quick. So I think down to the fact that they dropped out of the GT1 class, it made it even tougher to us because in the last round we were not as well prepared and our drivers weren't as strong as for this round. But there we could have won if we had a collision and we were quicker than them. But this round, no chance.
Yes, I think it was Miguel Burgess. I saw his name. He drove the first stint, and I obviously recognised him after his stunning drive in GT1 in Bahrain. So I saw him leading the GT2, and I thought to myself, if we had another round, he could have driven the GT4 and had a full set of trophies, GT1, GT2, GT4. But he's obviously a quick guy.
Yeah, he is really quick, I have to say. He immediately pushed me after the start, and yeah, we had a very slow GT1 in front, the last of the GT1s, and yeah, that caused us the spin, but in the end it was okay because the other teams like CDR, ADR and RFN got into much more trouble with the slower GT1 and all got damage, and I think ADR left already after 5 laps, so we were a bit lucky to don't be in the pack at the start of the race due to the spin, so I think it panned out pretty okay for us.
We had an embarrassing little blip at a pit stop. I was finishing my 2-hour stint, and it was time to switch over to our reserve driver pair at least. And I was just a bit rusty. I'd only arrived home from work, jumped on the game. Anyway, of course, I failed to select him in the pit menu, so I pitted, took fuel and tyres. And he said, do you want to keep going? And I said, man, I've just done 2 hours. I'm going to do 1 lap and you're having this car, my friend. So I went round one more time and handed over the car. So no real harm done. It probably cost us 30 seconds or something. But in the greater scheme of things, when people are losing 5 minutes and 7 minutes, it's really something more to have a laugh about than get too upset about.
I'd just like to say quickly that Jimmy Hughes has dropped off a little bit in pace. Still the gap in the lead at 6 seconds. However, Fabio Assunção in the Go Speed racing car has just unlapped himself from Jimmy Hughes. So he's found some pace somewhere, and of course Go Speed did qualify on pole position, so we do know that they have got some pace, and Fabio Assunção was the guy to put them on pole, so we do know he's got pace as well. Maybe they're really chasing Ismael Vietes in the race rFactor endurance team for 3rd position in class.
Yes, when I was on track, I noticed that I think there's a reasonable spread of pace, a significant spread of pace, I would say, between Fabio and perhaps their number 2, number 3 drivers, because at one point we were hauling them in a couple of seconds a lap. But Fabio is clearly their top gun, and he's put in the car and he's doing a hell of a job. So I just hope that he decides to go home for dinner and calls it a night sooner rather than later, before I get in the car.
Yeah, he's just done a 1 minute 57.9, which is a really competitive time considering how late it is in the race. This is normally the time where people's brains start to fade, so to say, and start seeing a little bit more mistakes, a little bit more issues, especially since it's getting a lot darker. It's got really dark really quick, to be honest. But I mean, for these guys to be pumping out those kinds of lap times is really something to commend. Jimmy Hughes, of course, getting held up a little bit by traffic, losing a bit of that gap to Cavella and Renell. We'll see how that battle develops from here on out. See whether Matt Cape can catch the first position guys, or whether they're happy with the 2nd place and decide to just drive a little bit more conservative and hold their position.
I just saw that one of just RFN Motorsport ahead of us pitted, and our driver at the moment is pretty competitive, running sub 2.0s and or low 2.0s at the moment, and I hope we can close the gap further now, because yeah, we were more than 1 lap behind them, and now when we get out we should be around, I guess, 1 minute 40 behind, so we already caught up a lot of time to them. So yeah, let's keep our fingers crossed we can catch them. I will be back in the car in about 40 minutes from now on, so I will try my best to also cut the gap down to RFN, so there will still be a fight to the flag, I guess, for second place in GT2, so just some entertainment for the guys out there watching.
Yeah, no, indeed. In fact, you know, it's really, really thrilling that here we are with 2.5 hours to go in a 12-hour race. So we've had, 9.5 hours of racing. And in the top class, we've got a battle with 2 teams separated by 8 seconds. And as Frederick's just pointed out, in GT2, there's a fight there for P2, which is going to go down to the wire. And a little bit further down in GT1, the Fig Jam team, our goal is, I'm getting in the car about the same time as Frederick, so I'll see you out there, Frederick. I'm in the final 2-hour stint, hopefully going to be able to pull in, not Fabio, but hopefully I'll be fighting one of the other guys. I'd rather fight one of the other guys than Fabio, if I'm honest. So there's some amazingly close racing yet to come, and you know, I just think it's incredible, 9.5 hours in, that these battles are still live.
Yeah. It was pretty amazing on the last round. We, due to damage repair, we had 25-second deficit to the leaders in our last stint, so we should have been just 5 seconds behind them on our last stint, and I was able to close us down, I guess, to 15 seconds at the end of the race. So we had 8 hours, and it was really decided by 10 or 15 seconds at the end. That was pretty impressive, keeping in mind that in Bahrain we had a much bigger field, so it was even more difficult to get your times in. And
no, indeed, incredibly close finish. I remember hearing you talking about it afterwards, that you had to push like crazy in the final stint to try to pull them in.
It was really funny. I was entering the last corner of the race, and just in that moment my front left tire just, if you hit the last block in a GT2 car, you get suddenly a big lot of understeer, just like your tire exploded. And I really got into the final corner of the race, and exactly in that corner my tire was completely gone. I just managed to do it. I wanted to do an outlap and go back to the pits, but I couldn't get the car around, so it was really our car breakdown to the line because I pushed it completely to the limit. That was really fun to drive that stint. It was really amazing.
Yeah, that's certainly pushing it to the limit. I guess if in a perfect world you'd just run out of fuel and run out of tyres just as you roll to a stop in your pit box, and that's what you seem to manage to do.
Yeah, that was really good. I still consider that as my best ride until today, so we were second, but I was really proud to still manage to close the gap that much. You don't get anything for that, but it's just kind of satisfaction to know that if you haven't had damage, you could have taken the win.
Well, that's the biggest thing we take away from these races, isn't it? You know, we don't get anything tangible from any of them, really. It's just that intrinsic satisfaction of having had a fantastic race, and what an odyssey this is today. 12 hours of racing. What an amazing odyssey. It'll be 340, 350 laps by the end. And what memories we'll all take away, and of close battles, and hopefully some successes for us all.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just seeing we are really closing now on the RFN by around 1 second per lap, so we are down to 1 minute 20. So I hope our goal is still realistic to get them in 2.5 hours, but it will be a massive ask to do it. So I hope our driver now can get it down to maybe 50 seconds or something like that.
Right, I've just asked for us to get on board with Alexi Pivola. Just waiting for him to get us to the start finish straight, and then maybe David, you can get us a lap, or talk us through a lap of this wonderful Losail circuit.
Guys, I'd love to. My rFactor has frozen, so I'm simply using live timing to talk to you. So I think I'd like to offer that that to Frederick. I'm sure he'll do a fantastic job. I've actually got a bit of a computer issue, and shortly I'm going to have to shut everything down and fire everything back up. So I'm going to have to decline that invitation, Xavier.
Yeah, I would like to do it, but I guess I'm just using the YouTube stream, but the YouTube stream seems to have something lag from the...
I'll take the honor.
Okay.
Right, well, we're heading into the
You
final
do it,
corner
Xavier.
now. Simulator in the GT1, and I've driven the GT1 already. We'll see if we can get you guys some little bit of an insight into how to drive the GT1 around the circuit at full pace. Right, so it's Cavello, of course, coming across the line, and on the left you can see the sun setting, and on the right, really, really dark circuit, and if you look on the floor, there's just some sand all over. Right, on the 150 plate board, going through the gears down into second gear, hooks the car right into that right-hander, bolts it down, second gear for this really tight sort of left-hander that opens up. You can get on the gas early and drift it out wide, float the car in for the next corner and fourth, and then whack fifth as soon as you whack onto that little bump. Go down through the gears as soon as you're on the 150 mark and brake until you're in third gear, really, really slowly. As that's all. These corners are really tighten up on these double right-handers, and then heading down towards the hairpin now, the most dreaded corner probably on the circuit. You can either take it into second or into first, and of course better options is the second gear option. Coming into this really tricky right-hander that we've been talking about a lot, where a lot of guys get confused as to where they are. Oh, and it seems as though Cavello might have gotten a little bit confused as well, as he's run a little bit wide. Got to be careful seeing the toy car on the edge of the circuit there, coming in very fast, sort of fifth, fourth gear corner, down the gears into third, into this quick left-hander, really opens up. You can get on gas early again, drift the car, floats out wide. Coming into now the triple right-handed section. Now just watch as you downshift straight into flip. Flip the apex, flat on the gas again, lifting off again, shifting down into fourth, flat on the, as you touch the apex, flat on the gas again, shifting down into fourth once again. Backing the bump, getting a nice floating car out onto the edge of the circuit wall, getting a little bit of a shaky moment there. And a lot of grip into this next corner, so you can just literally gear down and kick it in without even braking. Coming into the final corner, it's got a bit of traffic, got to negotiate that into third gear, second gear down to the gear, turning it in really, really nicely. It's a very good exit there. Of course, the traffic went with the Project Resistance Racing Team GT2 car, and that is the lap of the Losail circuit. And Lucas himself somehow just got pace and really annihilated them down the straights there. That was really, really weird to see him have that much pace. But yeah, I mean, as you saw into some of these corners, you can go really, really quickly on entry and mid corner, and then on exit really whack the power early. And in some corners you really have to slow down, and again, like this corner here, coming into the double right-hander section before the hairpin, really slowing it down in third gear. Make sure you touch the apex, make sure you don't go too wide, and then again, slowing it down a lot. Touch the apex and don't drift out too wide, which Corvettes has done. Then into the chicane again, where it's a little bit of contact there, slow learners himself. But yeah, as I said, again, trying to get the car to slow down enough to make the corners. This one also really that dreaded right-hander that we've been talking about really tightens up on you. I didn't get to mention that on the last lap.
Guys, I'm going to take my leave now, sort out my frozen computer, have some food, have a coffee, and get ready to do my stint. So been a pleasure working with you. Thanks for the opportunity, and I'll come into the commentary booth at the end of the race for a quick chat hopefully. So good luck to all of you for the last 2.5 hours of the race. Cheers.
Thank you, David. Your work has been much appreciated today. Thank you for stepping in and giving us a little bit of an extra insight into how these cars work and how the circuit is. Right guys, unfortunately I'm going to have to head off with my own channel as well, so I'm going to run you through the standings as they are at the moment, just as I see them on the scoring page. I'm not really going to make a big deal about the sort of one lap down incident or anything. I'm just going to read what I've been seeing on the live scoring page. Of course, in first position overall and in GT1, Swedish Realist with Cabela Linneo. Second position, Mad Cape Racing Team. GT1 with Jimmy Hughes at the wheel. Currently, I think he's going to be pitting really soon, and Robert Knockon will be in the car after him. Third position overall is Project Resistance Racing, Sergio Costa, who's also first in class for the GT2s. Second in class and fourth overall, RFN Motorsports with David Pilado Gonzalez. Third in class in GT2 and fifth overall, TXL Racing with Matt Sintal at the wheel. Tiger Racing, which is owned by one of the RD staff members, Stefan Gutenberg, as well as his accomplice in the rFactor 2 staff forums. It's Ian Franson as well. Haven't really seen much of him in this race, to be honest. They're 6th overall and 4th in class, GT2. Then 7th overall, 3rd in class for the GT1 is Race rFactor Insurance Team with Ishmael Vaites. 8th position overall, 4th in class for GT1, Go Speed Racing with Fabio Sunsal. 9th overall and 5th in GT1 is Big Jam Racing with Per Offquist. 10th overall, running up the top 10, 1st in class in GT4, Roaring Pipes Maniacs, owned by Bram Hemsveld, the owner of Race Department, and sort of the lifeblood behind Race Department. And at the wheel of that car is Martian Strip Track. 11th position and 2nd overall in GT4 is SRVN's Mark Caprice. 12th overall, 5th in class for GT2 is ISD Racing's David Lawrence. 3rd in class for the GT4, car number 314, Race rFactor Endurance Team Ishmael Vazquez. 4th overall in class for GT4 and 14th overall is Project Resistance Team WS. David Sola is in that car. 5th overall in GT4, 15th overall for this race is the Road Bandits Michael Wade. We've then got 16th overall and 6th in class with Team Norman Sports Dennis Kafar. And then we've got the first of the retirements. 6th position in class and 17th overall, CDR Motorsports. Felix Herbert is in completed 229 laps there. Mad Cape GT4, 7th in class, 18th overall. Tomasz Foff was the last driver in that car, only 153 laps completed. The final classification, or DNF, consequently as a DNF, is the ADR Motorsports car, David van der Ven, who was 7th in class in GT2 and 19th overall, unfortunately only completing 5 laps. Right, ladies and gentlemen, that's all from me, Xavier Follow today. The commentary for the Virtual World Endurance Championship, and consequently the final time I'll be speaking in the Virtual World Endurance Championship broadcast for 2013. I hope you have all enjoyed a brilliant season and a brilliant day's racing today. I will see you all for the next season next year. Bye bye for now.